Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to a throwback review here for a film that I don't think I really got around to sitting down and viewing until late last year, though I probably had seen it before, but it was so long ago that I had no memory of it. And that is for the 1981 film The Howling, starring Dee Wallace in probably one of her most iconic roles, one even mentioned in the film Scream when they're in this little scene within a video rental store.
Cool. What's that werewolf movie with E.T.'s mom in it?
The Howling, horror, straight ahead.
Okay, thanks.
And the synopsis for this film is as follows. After a bizarre and near-deadly encounter with a serial killer, a television newswoman is sent to a remote mountain resort where residents may not be what they seem. So, that's kind of like some of those aspects of it that I really liked the most was Dee Wallace being this newswoman, seeing her kind of get in over her head for this story, and have to deal with the aftermath. Working with a counselor who suggests getting out to this mountain resort. That was really my hook, was to see what's going to happen with her character. While she's on her journey of healing of sorts, two of her co-workers are also investigating the serial killer and are slowly uncovering more and more information, leaning toward her really being in danger going to this resort. And well, while it's not really any sort of a spoiler given the name and the poster or the cover of it, werewolves. Werewolves is what this film is about, and of course on the forefront of my mind during this was also an American Werewolf in London. Though it came out a few months later than this film did, it was always the more famous of the two for me, mainly because I think the Academy Award associated with the special effects and everything and the bits of comedy thrown in with American Werewolf in London. But luckily, if I were old enough to see both of these films in the theater that year, they are different enough to be enjoyed very separately, with The Howling definitely being much more of a serious film. It has to do more with dealing with crisis, I feel like, or our human nature versus animal instincts. As two of our leads are at this mountain retreat, more of this comes out. And even though as viewers we know that the werewolf themes are kind of right around the corner and something's going to be happening with that, they're slowly unfolding in this story, where it's not like a constant violent werewolf horror show. More of a slow reveal during this mystery that's being dealt with. And a lot of this comes through from the other side of the story as well, these co-workers of hers investigating back at home, uncovering more about this killer and everything kind of around him, dipping into the occult and so forth, setting this path out to take us along as we kind of switch back and forth between the mountains and the city, what's going on. And while in the mountains, switching between our lead and her partner who's there with her as they kind of get separated and are doing their own things. So as this danger is kind of building, it really kept me on board to see what would happen next as this whole werewolf aspect started to grow a bit further into this. And as for the effects in this one, American Werewolf in London definitely has some better effects in my opinion. But, particularly in their transformation scene, which was kind of like their moonshot, no pun intended about the moon there, to kind of bring the most realistic effects across. But in The Howling, we get what I feel like is a bit more werewolf stuff overall. More transformation, more partial transformation. Details covered in darkness or in silhouette adding to this creepy factor and horror factor when something does jump out, not to mention a tension that, slowly builds throughout that whole process. But honestly, the effects in this film, for the most part, were really good. And not just for the time, as since they were all practical, or most of them, more on that in the second. We get that in-camera sense of realism that we don't really see as often these days, which really holds up due to how they pulled it off initially. But now there are a handful of scenes that did kind of stand out that the effects weren't quite as good, such as a silhouette, which was animated for some reason. And I believe there's even like a stop motion wide shot that kind of stood out. But ultimately, it didn't really take too much away from the film at all, if anything. And the final werewolf shot, which though the transformation leading up to it was really cool, I just didn't like the overall style of that final werewolf look. But, other than that, everything about that I loved. And as for Dee Wallace, everything about her character I simply loved. She's very charismatic and appealing, from setting up that initial scene to introduce her and seeing her struggle afterward. It works to really put us in her shoes and be on her side, which aids in the horror that we want her to survive and to be safe. And I think that's why this one is such a popular role of hers that she's always associated with, even though Dee Wallace has had such a very long career. And likely this is probably one of the reasons why I even really enjoy this one, with just the way that she brought that character to screen. Now, I'd watched this one last summer, and it had been so long since I'd first seen it that I had no memory of it. And shortly afterward, I'd scooped it up used on Blu-ray to add to my collection as I started building up that collection. I think I might even have a video from last summer about physical media. But watching it in this format was great because it was a great transfer, had a lot of detail, great color, and I didn't have to hunt around to find out where I could actually stream it. So, and this is, this is one which the story itself, the performance by Dee Wallace, and the overall feel makes it more than worth checking out. And speaking of checking out, thanks for checking out this quick little video here about The Howling from 1981, which at the time of this video is available on paid rental as well as on disc. But I've seen it pop in and out of different streaming services over the last year even, so be on the lookout if interested. I know there are several sequels that were made to this. I believe in total there's about 8 films. Most of which I haven't really heard anything good about. And I think Part 7 is particularly difficult to track down and is considered really not a good film. But so due to the difficulty in tracking those down and the reception of those entries, I don't really see myself doing an entire franchise review of them anytime soon. However, perhaps I'll work in a viewing of another one of those titles here and there, another one of those sequels, see if it's something that's worth putting up some content for. So be sure to subscribe and hit that little bell icon to get notifications for when I put up any of those new entries. Anyways, thanks for coming by and sticking around to the end, as it really does help out quite a bit, and I will see you in the next one.